Welcome to The Chat. This is a podcast from the team at Glasgow City Mission, the first and the granddaddy of the global city mission movement. I'm Charles Maasz, proud to be CEO at this time. This series is intended as a resource and a point of connection for anybody interested in the work that goes on at Glasgow City Mission. I want to speak to people whose passion, vocation, career, faith journey or life aligns with an aspect of the work and the rhythm of what we do. Many will have a faith perspective, some will not. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Please check out our website, our social media platforms. Click like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and add us to your favorites. Feedback is welcome, but please keep it clean, keep it civil. Thank you. Welcome. We've got Alasdair Bennett.
Hey, good to be with you, Charlie.
Thanks. I've only been in Scotland 20 years and I still struggle with some things, and those are different ways of spelling Stuart, different ways of spelling Graham, and different ways of spelling Alasdair.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Alasdair, the original Gaelic spelling, has got a D in it, which Billy Connolly made a really good sketch out of.
See? Was it clean?
Well, I thought it was clean, but it was a right good slagging of anyone that's got D in their Alasdair. So,
yeah.
But I'm an Alasdair with a D.
That's very good. A proper Gaelic Alasdair.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you, Charlie. Good to
Thank you. Thanks for being on. So for anyone who doesn't know, Alasdair is the chief of Bethany Christian Trust, which is incredible. So we want to hear about Alasdair's walk in that regard, his role, his ministry. I think of it in terms of his ministry. And we're going to talk a little bit about what motivates people, what motivates you, Alasdair, to do what you do. I guess we may touch on what motivates me, although it's better that my dark heart isn't revealed too quickly or too openly to anybody that might listen, because our supporters might listen to this, Alasdair. So
well, let's hope so. I mean, hopefully we'll get a single view or more. We'll see. Yeah,
we'll see what happens. We've gone about an hour with a lot of people, so I don't know how you're doing for time and what your timetable looks like today.
I'm good for time. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go viral with this. I think we want to really get this out there.
Yeah. Well, you know what happened? If we end up talking nonsense and it runs, we'll just have to come back for a different session.
Yeah.
Because there are so many touch points on between our work, obviously. Yeah. Albeit I think of Bethany as within the context of Scotland and the work that we do, you're like a massive young brother. I think that would be right, because if we're venerable in 200 years and you're quite a lot younger than that, but massive, relatively speaking, to what we do, then we look to you as an inspirational force. So it's great to have you here. It's great to have you on here, and I'm really hoping that we can talk a little bit about what work you do, the work that Bethany does. But let's start then by thinking about something that you've raised with me, which is what motivates people to do what people do.
Yeah.
Because you've been with Bethany now for over 20 years. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, started in 97 as a project worker. I had a classic expression that had grown in my own heart, and it was the way I described it and the way a lot of people do, is I had a heart for the homeless, or heart for people who are struggling in that respect. And that's the way I talked about it then. I wouldn't say now describing a group of people in that way, but that's the way I approached it, with a kind of green fingers, sort of seeking to help others in a way that might benefit them, and not necessarily understanding or grasping all the different context and depth. That there's no such thing as the homeless, or it's people going through challenges in life at different times and suffering, whatever circumstance and challenges that they may have come up against. So yeah, 97 started as a project worker in Bethany Christian Centre. That's essentially a recovery project for men who have been homeless and are currently homeless, but they're looking to engage with full abstinence from drugs and alcohol, engage in a program. And I started there as a project worker, loved it, and became manager quite soon, probably again quite fresh to it. It was only 27 when I was the manager, and but I had some amazing years there. 13 years managing the service there, and then had just been in different roles since in Bethany. Yeah, I mean, motivation, there's so many things really that are touch points for people, as you say, for people coming into and engaging with work. And I think we were just chatting there before we started recording about different motivations, not just from within a Christian context, but generally. And I have found quite often, like from a public perspective, people get behind cause. You know, so at the moment, and rightly so, people have been concerned around the last few years, like poverty has been a cause that people have got behind to an anti-poverty cause, or others might get behind a climate change cause. I think in Scotland there is thankfully homelessness in the sense of it has been highlighted, thankfully, as being something, as a cause for people to get behind, that they can actually, you know, people are concerned about the levels of rough sleeping, the levels of people in destitution, and so that's wonderful that cause is there, and people can engage with that. But for me, it's that's a kind of justice call, I think, which is awesome. And as the body of Christ, you know, Glasgow City Mission and Bethany Christian Trust representing the body of Christ together amongst other charities and Christian charities, I think that justice cause is really important. But I find it has to have the fuller, rounder, what the Bible calls being compelled by Christ. And so that for me is the heart of it, Charlie, the being compelled by Christ, compelled by Jesus Christ. And there's an expression in the Bible that we pass on the comfort that we ourselves have received. And that's something that has been really close to me as a young guy. Went through some very challenging years really from about 19 to 21. And coming out of that, I came to faith. I hadn't been a Christian before then. Came to faith, came to know the Lord, and you know, for me, it was both a moment and a journey at the same time. So when I was 19, I'd lost my way. I'd made a lot of mistakes. I had a good family upbringing, good support. I hadn't suffered in that respect, but I just made some really bad choices and brought suffering on myself, really. But through trying various things to try and get myself sorted, eventually happened to speak to a minister at my brother's suggestion, as it was. Maybe Alasdair should see a minister. This was after seeing psychiatrists, psychologists, GPs, various self-help approaches. And I went and spoke to this minister, and he explained to me the good news, and the heart of it being that I was, you know, so my need was, I needed forgiveness, and I didn't know if forgiveness was possible. And he explained to me the good news that Jesus Christ, in his death on the cross, had taken upon himself the thing that I'd done, and the things, plural, that I'd done, the consequence for them, in terms of the eternal consequence, not necessarily the impact, but the eternal consequence of them, the guilt for them, and the shame for them. And I must have heard that before, you know, been around Sunday school as a kid and stuff like that, but I felt like I'd never heard it. And I believed and received that truth, and with that, just flooded with the grace of God and his presence just surrounding me and transforming me. So there was that moment, but I didn't walk out the door like everything was resolved. It was a journey of about 18 months after that, dealing with some deep-seated fears, facing up to some deep-seated heart things, exploring, did I really want to change, all that stuff. And bit by bit, layer by layer, I was peeled back, stripped back, and then built back up again. So that was from about 19 to 21. And with that, there was definitely talking about motivation, there was definitely an empathy kind of put in my heart. I remember having a daydream, thinking one day, oh, it'd be amazing if there was a house somewhere, like a place where people could come, and when they were suffering from like depression or anxiety, or like maybe got involved in drugs and alcohol addiction and stuff, and they could come and they could get healed and they could meet the Lord and they could be restored. And it was one of those things that was come and go in my heart when I was like 21, and it wasn't until I was 27, and I remember being appointed as the manager of the Bethany Christian Centre, and it just came back to me like in the afternoon, that was this, you know what I mean? Like, and so I've always considered it like a total privilege. I know yourself as well, the work that we do, it's also God dependent. Like our main role together in our leadership is to be on our knees, isn't it? It's like just to, it's like as far as possible, whatever aiming at humility is, because once you think you've got it, you're actually departed from it. But as much as possible to be, seeking to just be an ordinary guy, as Anne Berry, she was one of the founders with Alan Berry of Bethany Christian Trust. She said, Bethany Christian Trust is a group of ordinary people serving an extraordinary God, and that's really my heart. So there's three things now for me that are motivational in terms of what we do. One is empathy for the men and women and the young people that we serve, what they're going through, the trauma that they've experienced, the pain, the damage from others, the damage of knowing what it's like myself to make mistakes as well, the systemic barriers that people face, that are like out with anyone's kind of personal control. All these things that are almost up against, people are up against in different walks of life. And having it does just pull on my heart in a good way, not in a sort of like, well, nothing can be done, but like a motivation to seek to serve, seek to do more. The cause is definitely there, like, and I think that's a touch point for maybe companies sometimes to get engaged. It's a touch point for the public to be like, yeah, we want to help, because people are concerned, and that sense of injustice, like you and I hear that expression a lot, when in the 21st century, we shouldn't have this, we shouldn't have that. And we would be the first to agree and say, yeah, of course we shouldn't. But what can we do meantime? What can we do together meantime? And the third is that it's Christ that compels us. It's the love of Christ, knowing that his love, and that is not in any way meaning that we are persuading or proselytizing. It's the motivation, but what we do, the outworking of that, is to anyone of any faith, of any protected criteria, of any belief or none, and that is actually what it means. That is part of being a Christian organization, is that it has that full equality in terms of our response. So those are the three things for me, I think, that are quite up there as far as motivations.
Well, there's going to be so much now. If I'm listening to that, if anyone listens to this, God willing, they will. You've hit on so much stuff that of which any one thing we could open up and explore. Yeah. And some of it is powerfully intriguing, because so now they can go away and they can Google Bethany, they can Google history of Bethany, they can Google the Berries and their tremendous foundational work and all of that.
Yeah.
But there is a foundational work that you've just alluded to in your life, and that is that whatever you did to lose yourself, and in the losing of yourself, you've clearly come under some tremendous conviction of your wrongdoing that has weighed on you in a powerful and palpable sense. So did you, in a sense, feel that whatever it is you did, that you'd almost done it obstinately and willfully, in defiance of a deeper sense in yourself? How was that?
Not entirely. I mean, yes and no. I remember, like, I remember as a young lad. I don't remember it actually, but I remember my folks told me that I'd said this. I had said to my folks one day, I don't want to be good anymore. I mean, that's just the frustrations of a 12-year-old coming out. But actually, that's what played out. But not till a bit later, maybe 15 upwards. I would say it was a bit of both circumstances, peers, who leads who. Myself and peers got involved in all sorts of stuff. It was the initial stages of like illegal raves and all that kind of thing. And it was, my feet were not deep into it. There was sort of 1 foot in the rave, that expression, but it was enough for me to get my fingers burnt and actually be damaged by it. The things, conscience. We don't talk about conscience a lot. My conscience practice. I wasn't a Christian, but you have some sense of like, just in life with mates, with family, with different things. Right and wrong up to a point. You know what I mean? And people have different views on that, but the stuff that I got involved, I went beyond what I knew was wrong, willingly, and it's that and others and the consequences of that was like part of what ended up leading me to the Lord, because I needed forgiveness, and I didn't know if forgiveness was even possible. I mean, the other thing that was driving me, I was also I was damaged through some of the stuff that I'd got involved. I was damaged in my mind physically, and so I needed healing. So there was a need for forgiveness and healing, but yeah, that was the motivation. And there was a conviction, absolutely. And that was what drove me to the Lord's forgiveness and His grace. And the beauty of it is, like, God's mercy, and the Bible talks about like God's mercy as being new every morning. It talks about it being everlasting. It talks about mercy being rich and full and like an overflow, like talks about it being lavished upon us. And these were ideas, and I didn't know any of that. I mean, most folk, certainly in my generation, most folk would have some sort of a bit of a knowledge of what the church kind of represented, the local church and the different elements. And there's less of that awareness now, but it certainly didn't, for me, speak of those things. I didn't know that was part of I thought it was like, you need to do right.
Yeah.
But to discover there's all this mercy and grace and was incredible. And that's the motivation behind what we do.
Yeah, Scott, I mean, forgive me so as an incomer, but I've been here a long time, raised my children here, got my grandchildren here. So I just say that as my credentials while I'm about to say what I'm going to say, which is Scottish Christian spirituality isn't famous for its touchy-feely God.
Yeah.
And there's an austerity that's famous, and perhaps a caricature, certainly a caricature, because obviously I know better now, but there is a kind of a wrath to the Lord, which is to be revered, respected, and given due regard, and should keep you on a straight and narrow, which makes for the revelation of the repentant heart that actually, yes, God has absorbed all of this. I read 3 things this morning, 2 of which I can remember. One of them was there's an Eastern Orthodox guy in the States, and he says, "What you mean God can't? Can God forgive you?" He said, "God, you are the idea that you might not be forgiven by God is like saying I'm going to throw a handful of grains of sand at the ocean and think it's making a difference." It's like, God's got it, man. It's like, it's okay.
Exactly.
Because I also fall into self-indulgence. It's like, the church will burn up if I walk inside it. I'm that bad. It's like, no, you're way over egging your role in this whole schema of salvific value. You don't really have that weight. You think you do, but no, you don't. And the other thing was that we read this morning was 1 Corinthians 13, the great passage on love, but it's just the first verse. Without love, I'm just a sounding gong or a clanging brass.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
that loving capacity, isn't it?
Totally. And so, I mean, this isn't so much about Bethany's work now, but it is the foundation for all the people that I see coming into the work. So I had a drug-induced paranoid psychosis at the age of 19, and that is, I mean, if anyone's listening and they've had elements of that or versions of it, it's I mean, you really are imprisoned. And the two things that brought me out of it were faith and love. Faith to try and, you know, daily, every minute by minute, trying to believe it's okay to get on this bus, it's okay to do this, it's okay to do that, like stuff that people take for granted, but you really feel disabled within it, and are disabled within it, like for that time. So faith, but love, and the love bit was loving the people that I was afraid of, because paranoia results in fear that everyone can see your thoughts, think, and hates you, basically.
Yeah, do you harm?
Yeah, and so love pushes back in that and overcomes it. A perfect love casts out fear. So I know yourself, and in the work that we do, it's love for God and love for people that is a major, probably the major motivation for people coming in to serve in the kind of things that we're involved in. And yet it's not all that simple either, because then there can be a greenness too, like in the sense of an amateurness to that. If we then think, oh well, we've got love, we can fix people, we can do this, we can. Oh no, hang on a minute. It's way more complicated than that. Like, we need to understand first. We need to listen. We need to sit at the feet of those that have been through stuff that we haven't even conceived of.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, I think one of the things that we see, and I know you guys will, and we work together on a number of things where we see these things, is the level of childhood trauma, the level of damage that is inflicted in the early years, and homelessness, addiction, mental health breakdown, debt, violence, custody. A lot of the things are the negative fruit, the thorns and bristles that are formed from those roots of the pain and damage done. Not that it's all that, because as we've just been sharing, it's a complex. It's things that are done to us and things that we do, but the level of damage that's done way beyond what we see, for me, has, over the years, it's moved from, when I first started at Bethany Christian Centre, it's moved from much more a choice emphasis to much more a circumstance recognition that people are in the situation.
When you said earlier about I've lost you. I think you've frozen on my screen, but it may not make any difference. If you can hear me, okay, that's okay. Can you?
Hey,
Hey, I think that kept recording all the way through my falling off the edge of the planet.
Oh, did it?
I think so.
In that case, it'll have me chewing gum.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. You chewing gum will be great.
You can edit it down if need be. I've
just paid for we've just gone for a massive upgrade on my connectivity to and I'll say it's Sky, right? But they're scoundrels, because we've asked for massive capacity at home,
Yeah.
And we're paying for it, and it got better, because for the last 7 months it's been impossible to have a conversation online without tethering to my phone against the window. Yes. Which isn't perfect.
Yeah.
So we've gone for this new package, and everything was great, but then I've just got bumped. So now I'm less than happy with Sky, but it's okay, and we'll continue. One of the, just to pick up though, what you're saying is to connect a couple of things, is there is there is that will to do that work in and through a human being. And then there's that response which comes from empathy. Okay. I've been told I've got a lunch coming as well. This podcast is full of interesting interjections. It's that thing of make me a channel of your peace. It's like and also you think of the parable of the unforgiving servant.
Yeah.
I forgave you. I forgave you your massive debt.
Yeah.
Now go and exercise that forgiveness. Exercise that understanding that whilst you fell into indebtedness, others will have done also, and not to hold it against them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really amazed at your testimony, because one of the reasons I didn't intend to work in this field, to be honest. But I've always been closely connected to it through life and other things. But personally, I lost my marbles completely through recreational drug use and the party scene.
Goodness, we might have been in the same situations.
Yeah, and I ended up massively paranoid, massively anxious, unable to trust my own thoughts. I ended up, for a short period of time, I was homeless in Bristol, and it was through being housed by a group. Every city's got one, the Hub. But people called the Hub in Stokes Croft in Bristol, they got me a flat because a landlord had agreed to allow the Hub to deposit, put a bond on me instead of a deposit, right?
Yeah.
And they got me into this flat, and I was just so amazingly grateful. And then this retired Anglican nun moved in upstairs, and then I got a part-time job in a restaurant. And this girl who had come back from her parents being on missionary field came as a waitress, and she started to. And then a guy I knew who was a reprobate starts telling me he's been baptized, and God starts moving in and around, me.
Yeah.
And I was able to let go of the wreck that I was clinging to in the storm. That was not fit for man the beast to be aboard. And for some reason I was hit with the gospel like you described. And part of that was that I was able to let go of the wreck and trust in this God thing.
Yeah.
In order to be dismantled, everything that was false be burned away, and that I could trust the fellowship and the putting back together of myself in order to become the man that is in this ministry that we're in now. And of course, yes, it's incredible parallel.
Goodness me. What age were you in the midst of that, the kind of the worst bit of it?
The worst bit.
The moment of sort of when change started.
Crisis and change. Well, it spread over a few years, really. I started falling into chaos at about 23, and I came to faith when I was about 26.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was. There's a pretty long pre-story to all that, but the real the fire and the difficulty was then. The worst mistake I made, well, maybe I say it's the worst mistake. Actually, in retrospect, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But that was I had an encounter with God when I lost my gear. I lost my stuff, my stash. Turned the flat upside down to find it. I was desperate for a smoke, and I couldn't find it. And I realized then, I thought, gosh, the anxiety, the desperation, something wrong with you. This isn't right, And I couldn't countenance a moment where to be clean, was just killing me.
Yeah.
And I cried out. I said, God, if you're real, you need to come for me, now, because it ain't working. If you're a real thing, I don't know where that cry came from, except from God himself, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And I heard them say to me, I know you better than you know yourself. I was like, wow, I want to know God now like he knows me. And then I found a blim of smoke, and I thought, great, there's a God, he's real, he knows me, and now I'm going to smoke my way to a closer union with God. So instead of finding, and he was with me the whole way, but I made it a much longer and harder journey than it needed to be.
Yeah.
Because I set about smoking my way to nirvana. And it didn't work out.
No, totally. I mean, that's fascinating. Like the damage we both caused ourselves, really. And yet, there's an expression that's used in recovery, better than well, and it's a bit twee, to be honest. But I get it, because you end up in having been restored, having known the weakest, most kind of the bottom, really, and knowing that you can't do anything yourself, and knowing that you're just literally flailing around, to be then put back together, that you are actually better than when you were before, in your right mind and in your sense of like, because everything has changed. Your eyes are open to all sorts of stuff. The structures of what you think and thought were important, what everyone values, is completely changed. You see through a whole load of stuff, and God has opened your eyes to, and as you rightly said, I couldn't agree more. It doesn't, at no point did it feel to me like, people, it just didn't feel like me choosing him, if that makes sense. Like, obviously I did, but in the mystery of it all, you just feel that you're so helped and so assisted by God's moving, but now to the point that that experience and that pain can be used to benefit others and bless others. Never in a way of like, I've been there, I've been through it, because it's different for every single person we meet.
Yeah.
But countless people that work in the mission and work in Bethany and other charities and in the church, who have come out and come through something that has really burnt them. Some things that have been done to people, and some things that we've done to ourselves, and God can use that stuff in a miraculous ways. Same with going through illness as well. People have been through the hardest things, the most challenging circumstances, and then able to pass on the comfort that they have received, no matter the outcome of what they've been going through. Like, because we serve a God of hope, and it's about bringing hope to people, and as we talked about at the beginning, about love as well, and faith, hope, and love. Those are the three greatest things that we can bring people. So I see that all the time, and I see myself in people, as I did when I started the centre. I saw myself in some of the men that were there. I see myself in people that are coming through now in their journey. They've maybe benefited from some support in one of the flats, or they've benefited through one of the recovery centres or whatever, but they're bit by bit, they might get involved in volunteering somewhere. They might engage in something out with Bethany or out with the mission, or then they might engage again and volunteer, and then they might end up working with us, and then eventually they're just like absolutely fire, bringing like streets ahead in terms of what they can bring to people, and I love that. I absolutely love seeing that. It's like a life transformed, and we do what we do whether that happens or not. For some it's that, like complete and utter transformation to the point that they become like just shining so brightly in what they're doing. And for others it's incremental, and it's stage by stage, and it might be relieving poverty, and they don't necessarily have that time or that moment, but it's still the ministry and the purposes of God that we bless and reach out to all, because that's what Jesus did. I mean, that's what he did all the time. So that's really amazing, though, Charlie, that those connections with the madness that we got ourselves involved in. I'm sure there's listening that would have, know people, or they themselves have, can connect with the fears, the worries, the paranoias, the mood, the damage done through substances, and the damage done through like choices as well, but also damage done to. I mean, that's such a sensitive subject, and not one that is easy to open up. But there is help, isn't there? I mean, there's help there. You know, people came around you. I was, you know, advised to go and see somebody, and it was possible. You know, if there's people there, if you're struggling, you know, fear or worry, and you might think, who can I talk to? Like, there is such a thing as confidentiality still. You can go to somebody and speak in confidence, to a Christian minister, to a Christian pastor, to like somebody, your GPs, like bound by confidentiality. You can go and speak without fear. You can, you know, start opening up the doors to get some help, and forgiveness is possible. You know, Jesus was absolute about that. Forgiveness is possible. The woman that was caught in adultery, and everybody wanted to stone her. Jesus said, well, whoever is without sin, throw the first stone, cast the first stone. And they all left, from the oldest to the youngest, because the oldest knew just how much they'd messed up. So yeah, but I mean, we do lots of stuff together now, which is awesome. I love working with you. You became chief executive before me by about a year, I think, roughly, or was
no, the reverse is true, I think.
Oh, sorry.
I've been in post for about a year and a half now.
Okay, sorry. So I was August 18, and you must have been early 19 or the end of 18.
Yeah, midnight, June 19.
So loved connecting up with you and Phil and Cami, and as well connecting up. And I know you connect up with Paul at Bethany too, and the team. We've got crossover with the caravan now, which is an exciting project to launch together. So far, working in one area in the East End, but looking to develop that in a couple of places, aren't we? Like, mostly focused on the outskirts of the city centre, in terms of not just providing food, but actually connection. Not that we are against providing food, because we're for providing food, but it's the compassion, it's the connection, it's the link, it's the regularity of seeing the same people and supporting them. So that's exciting. And then we've got the wild olive tree that we've kind of loosely are partnered around, which is a great project.
Yes.
And something we need to think about supporting, because it's quite tough for cafes just now, obviously.
Extremely tough, yeah. I mean, the caravan is a good thing you raised, because for anybody that listens to this who's Glasgow City Mission supporter, then Bethany have a caravan in Edinburgh. They've had one there for some time, and they've kindly partnered in with Edinburgh City Mission, which is wonderful. And then we got a call from you to say, okay, we're thinking of doing a Glasgow caravan, and do you want to partner in it? And now the one amazing thing and the weird thing about partnering with Bethany is that Bethany walk in to the saloon, the doors swing like this, you know, and they've got the full entourage. Cami comes in with a beard and the chaps and the big guns, and they say, we want to partner with you, and don't worry about a thing, because we've got the van, we've got the staff, we've got the insurance, we've got this, we've got that, we're just cool, and we're going to bless you in the kingdom work, and do you want to get your logo on the side of the van? And we say, yeah. And then frankly, like, it's just it's weird. Like, partnering with Bethany is not like partnering with anybody else, because you know, you'd have to iron out these sort of big terms of engagement, heads of terms, and then you'd want to get that legally ratified, and our lawyers would talk to your lawyers, and then we'd have to work out who's paying what for what, and and frankly, with you guys, it's a case of, oh, haven't we done that yet? Oh, I thought we might have done that already. So partnering with you is it feels right, you know, it feels like the way it should be. But it's the way it should be in everyone's wildest dreams, but everyone knows deep down it's probably going to go south if you don't tighten things up a bit. But with you, it feels pretty cool.
No, likewise, we feel the same. I think it's trust, isn't it? I mean, it's trust, and I think I've been thinking about across the field or the work that we're involved in. There's a lot of charities actually that are really engaged and active and supporting. And I think increasingly, actually, it's been good to see. I mean, this joint work is the one thing that everyone would always say, we need more joint working. But I actually think it's on the increase in a good way. I think there's a level of increased kind of just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost like a solution focused kind of mindset. Do you know what I mean? Like try to find solutions. But yeah, sometimes it'll be only once there's a written full blah blah blah, and others it's like, this is cool. This that can follow. And I think my informality leads me to prefer that route. But it's exciting actually what we can do together. I mean, as arms of the church and other Christian charities as well. Like we're so well supported by the local church and the national church, and we just want to be their hands and feet, don't we? Like and voice as well, because people need to hear about hope as well as see it in action. But yeah, I'm excited for that, the Caravan project as it grows, and excited for just blessing what you guys do. We're also, you and I have been so involved in these rapid reaccommodation welcome centres, which like we were so, what would you call it? Well, essentially, for folks that don't know the history about care shelters, they've been running for a number of years, saved many lives, thousands of lives, and had built up over the course in Glasgow and Edinburgh lots of partnership working, lots of charitable inreach, health inreach, housing inreach, all the rest of it. Great models actually, apart from the accommodation space. And although it had its benefits because you can see what's going on. And then through COVID, we're now using new accommodation spaces, or we thought we best use, new accommodation spaces. And so Charlie and I were involved very much with the Scottish Government and local councils and Homeless Network Scotland and coming up with this route map, thinking of the pros and cons very carefully, ironing out the language very carefully, because we want to honour and build upon the successes of the care shelters and night shelter, but also say we're doing a new thing, and in this sort of position of saying yes, but we're still doing this bit too, we're still doing that bit. But they I think it's, you're on the cusp of launching, or you will have launched by the time
we will have launched by the time this goes out.
So it's great to have these new services operating in hotels with the same level of inreach as before, building that side of things. And I think next year's a concern, how we go forward together and across Scotland and these kind of issues, because the hotels are not going to be vacant, put it that way.
No.
This time next year, I don't think. And so we have to think through what does the welcome centre look like in the future. Rapid reaccommodation, yes, but still we need that place for people to stay who have fallen through the cracks. But we can, with God's help, we can tackle that, and we can find a way.
I think that'll either become either somebody like you or us will, in each city respectively, or somebody like us will purchase a purpose built or a pre-existing hotel that's closed, and formally, excuse the dog barking there, and open it formally as an overnight welcome centre service. But because of the political ambition and the ideological ambitions that belong in the third sector and in the public local government arenas, it's likely to become more of a commissioned, I see it potentially becoming much more of a commissioned service. Whereas we've run it as a voluntary free service for the city in Glasgow. But I think the ambitions are that they would like, as a sector and government and local government wise, would like more control over it than that. Because at the moment it's kind of, they're beholden to our generosity, our own systems and protocols, because they're not paying for it. So we work with great partnerships, 18, 19 partners.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, though, I think if it's going to be a much more integrated service in the context of eradicating homelessness in Scotland, which is a great ambition.
Yeah.
And we're proud to be a part of that ambition. But the emphases are wrong. And there's also this bit about they're a bit ashamed of the fact that we had shelters.
Yeah.
As though it's a bit grubby and a bit shoddy, which of course they were not in the least bit. But you can see how that plays in terms of perceptions. And there's this effort to have us huckle us along and away from that into this new thing. So it's a very interesting time of flux and change. And we'll see.
I think you're right about the care shelter kind of link to them. I mean, we know, and everyone that's involved in them knows, they're absolutely built on all the strengths, all the good elements of those models, the high level of compassion, the low threshold for access, the multiple partnership working, experienced staff who could really get alongside folk who could take a lot in terms of getting kickback and challenging behavior. It's built on all those things, and we've simply added ensuite rooms.
Yeah.
It's not that distinct to that, but I think you and I both know that regrettably the level of rough sleeping in Scotland has been growing and has been huge, and I think there was a window of time during the lockdown that there was maybe a premature hope that rough sleeping is now ended.
We've solved it.
How can we sustain this end? And we were, I suppose, the prophets of doom and saying, well, unfortunately we don't think so. We would love that to be the case. We'd be the first to close these services if there was no rough sleeping, but regrettably we don't see that, and it's hidden just now. And so I think going forward, absolutely, we don't need to decouple it from what they were, because what we thought what they were had a place and a function. The issue was that people ended up having to need that.
That is the issue.
And I think going forward, yes, we would love for there to be no need for rapid reaccommodation welcome centres. I would say the same for a number of services. We would wish there was no need for.
Yeah, wish there was no childcare services. Wish there wasn't a police force. It wouldn't be necessary.
Yeah. So but it doesn't mean we won't need them. And I think I think the conversation generally is more towards like a recognition, even in some of the countries that are looked to as being like, they've really cracked it around introducing a greater range of housing options, and including housing first as their sort of first port of call. And even there, emergency crisis accommodation is still like the first port of call for a lot of people, as the first entry.
It has to be. If you find yourself as well, I've lots of experience with this personally in terms of family and a little bit of my own, but if you find yourself at the lowest possible ebb and you are without a place to call home, or worse, nowhere to even sofa surf, then necessarily you need to present yourself to a service in your district. That would be a homeless service. They will need to do. You can't be given a home that night. It's ridiculous.
In an ideal world, I would love that.
Well, that'd be great.
We're not there, and I think it's that recognition, it's that groundedness. You and I would love it. It's 30,000 homeless presentations, including families. Fluctuates around that each year. Goes up to 35, and when it goes up and down, there's a celebration of it's going down a bit, or like, oh no, it's gone up a bit. But it's around about that. 30 to 35,000 families a year, or individual households presenting as homeless, and these are the recorded cases in Scotland to the councils, and everyone knows there's more besides that. But
I think there's a lot more besides that, because there's a lot of people whose dignity and wherewithal, A, they don't know these services are available to them. 2, they wouldn't want to submit themselves to the scrutiny of those services. 3, they'd just rather camp down on someone's garage or their spare bedroom of a friend. until they just pull themselves back together with the help of others, maybe. But there's a whole host of people out there. Totally. They go back to live with their parents, you know.
Yeah, totally. And well, we would love it if there was 30,000 homes available for those individuals. I mean, thankfully, the good thing is most of the people that you and I and our team see at the Welcome Centre, previously care shelters, and we have changed them. This is the difficulty that we've got. We've almost got a message of saying this is a brand new thing, a brand new service that's got, you know, all these things, bells and whistles added. But we also know it does have that link. So it's that. But anyway, the good thing is that most of the people that we see and support, they only need the service for a short time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the myths that we often have to dispel, isn't it? Like this idea that there's a big group that's staying there right through. I mean, already the Welcome Centre in Edinburgh has seen hundreds of people when supporting them on, you know, all the time. So that is one, you know, that's a good thing, that it's catching people, it's getting them safe for the night, accommodated for the night, loads of wraparound support, linking them in with people, with empathy, with compassion, meeting physical needs, providing opportunity for a meal, some fresh clothes, shower, a good night's sleep, contact with people, link up with all the different in-reach services, and then supported on to the next place. And it depends on the city. I mean, we would love to have more direct referrals to flats direct from the service, but that's something we can just keep working towards.
Yeah, I think I'm concerned about people that, because we major on, because we even had to negotiate, if you like, or rather press the point that we wanted the word welcome, or you wanted this sense of hospitality rather than because there was a recommendation or a desire put in a question from Scottish government through their people, as if to call them, why are they not being called something like rapid move on centres or something? And it was just that kind of thing about let's hustle people through. But they're at a really bad place in their lives. You know, this is a place of welcome, assessment, appraisal, take stock, catch your breath, be treated like a human being. The danger is that they move from our services into less suitable. Often they will move from the bosom of your welcome into something that feels a little bit colder and a bit more jungle, before getting put into a flat or a house that suits them.
Yeah, and then even then, you know, I've known people over the years who the flat becomes the holy grail of, like, that's what I need, and they move in and it's not what they wished for, and so we need higher levels of support. I say we, all of us together, all the charities, Scottish government, local authorities working together, we need higher levels of support for people to sustain their accommodation, to give them that set. What does it feel like? We should combat loneliness. What does it feel like for somebody moving into a flat to really feel this is a new start, rather than just, right, I'm in my four walls, I've got my little bit of furniture that's arrived from the, you know, that I think there's a ton of work needs to be done there around, like, supporting people in their new homes and in their own homes. But anyway, we've got work cut out for us. I mean, I think
I mean, in the absence of I think about this regularly, in the absence of proper, like, the depth of community that you'd see described in, say, I don't know, an Acts 2 church, to give us a Christian example, but or you might, if you were reflecting on the earlier part of the 20th century, you'd say everybody shopped at the local shops, you'd talk to the shopkeeper, everybody would talk to each other, you'd pass each other on the street, you didn't pave over your front garden so that you could park your car on it and avoid walking all the way to the road. To avoid speaking to your neighbors. You know, there's a depth of being known, being reflected back at each other. There's a lack of deep community, and the symptom of the lack of depth of community, however you might have found it, is that people are isolated even if you're giving them a home. You say, oh, we've given them a flat, what's the problem? It's like, well, the flat wasn't it, was it? The house was divided against itself, can't possibly stand. And in place of the depth of community, you've got this wraparound care idea, which is great. But actually, it's all just symptomatic of the fact that people are yearning for meaning and a sense of place and of acceptance and of forgiveness that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah,
And
true.
just whacking someone in a flat is not going to do it. They could just go stark raving mad there, or they'll just create havoc for the neighbors there. But there's a bigger piece of work to be done nationwide in terms of addressing these issues of what is community going to look like in Scotland of the 21st century when we're all digitally isolated. We're connected but digitally isolated from one another.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the level of loneliness, massive concern. I mean, it was before COVID, lockdown, etc. As was the level of just the breakdown in mental health, young people, and the general population, but domestic abuse as well is rising. So there's big challenges. But together,
this stuff's not going to come clear until long time after lockdown stuff and COVID has been dealt with. The implications, the ramifications and the consequences are going to be coming through this pipeline for years to come, I'm quite sure. Makes your work more important than ever, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, together, like, and you know, one of the things that we're keen on is partnership. Like we need to make a difference together, like, and see our missions, like relieve suffering and meet long-term need in Scotland. That's our kind of mission statement. And that's what we'll just keep on seeking to do. I mean, thankfully, I think I've definitely have seen it coming together in increased measure over the years. And even in the last 12 months, I mean, there can be, it can be tricky because people like charities like ourselves, if there's commissioned work, fear can come in, will I lose this commissioned work? Or ambition can come in. I would like to get that commissioned work. That sort of stuff exists because it's the way the sort of whole thing is set up with procurement. But having said that, I think the general sense of charities, local authorities, Scottish government working together with sort of like, this is what we would like, this is what we would aim at, this is what we would drive for, is increasing, I think. And I find that I find less disagreement on what we would like to have as the outcomes, put it that way. So you like speaking to any different group, like, yeah, we agree, let's aim at that. But then, so having got agreement, it's like then the work has to kind of crack on, because it's no use just agreeing. And I mean, that's base one, you know, in a meeting or in a forum or in a round table, and like, oh yeah, that's the way to go. Then we have to do it. That requires resource, requires people, requires commitment. And so I suppose, like you, that's where our focus is, like, on as much as we can, and staying within God's will. Like, we want to keep within the purposes of God for Bethany Christian Trust, and what, you know, like to do what and where He wants us to be engaged. But as much as we can to do more, to serve people, and in a way that is like supporting what's going on in it already. Because there's no, regrettably, some of the stuff that we do, any charities, some of the stuff that we do can feel a little bit like a drop in the ocean sometimes. And so we need to all be doing more, I think, but it's not straightforward, is it? And maybe that's another session.
I think so.
On an upbeat note, we do see, I know from talking to your teams and seeing the work in action, and the work that Bethany does as well, we do see hope being sown and left, right, and centre, and people are, you know, I don't just mean like hope in the sense of gospel and you know, coming to that living faith, but just hope for life, you know, like hope to get out of this suffering, I don't have to be in debt forever, I don't have to suffer food poverty for the next.
You combat hopelessness.
Exactly.
And I think one of the things I like to think about, because it is a massive task. I mean, we literally skimmed the surface of what could be any number of huge conversations. But for every single, you know, when Jesus puts a simple demand on us, which is I was hungry, did you feed me? I was cold, did you clothe me? Give them a glass of water. any act done out of a genuine, authentic place is a transformative act.
Yeah.
And in as much as somebody once said to me, like they said to you, you know, Jesus took the sin of the world on his shoulders, and it was that, because the soul that sinned should die. Jesus knew no sin. Jesus wouldn't die but for us, but for our stuff. And he took it into death where it belongs. And death can't hold him there. So he rises again. Now, whether that's theologically on point or not, doesn't matter. As a figure and as an illustration and as a picture, it works powerfully, because for every person that's been changed by something that you do, something that your team does, the world is changed. They think differently. They've caused them to pause and reflect and think, or a life that's been put on the straight and narrow. That person is now changing the world for every action that they do.
Exactly. A ripple effect.
A ripple effect. And so you can't do the big thing. We are literally throwing sand at the ocean and hoping to make a difference.
Yeah.
But we do so in faith, in hope, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it adds up. It definitely adds up.
Yeah, it does.
It's powerful.
Well, I'm glad that we're not called to think and dwell too much on the big picture, because we would get either grandiose or hopelessly depressed.
Yeah. No, I know. There's some big challenges, but I think that's where joint working and partnership and like joint working can be put around as a thing. I mean, like really joint working, like doing stuff together to make a difference and supporting each other, not competing with each other, like supporting one another and like, this is awesome, this is great, you know, rather than, oh, is that maybe is that on my turf, or you know, that kind of thing.
Totally that.
Yeah,
totally that. It's hard though to trust, you know. It's easy to do it with you. It's easy to do it with Street Connect, right? There's a lot of commonality there, because our guiding principle and ethos, our values and our ideology and our aspiration for the future,
it creates trust as well.
Creates trust, right? But you know, so if we've defined the end between us and the sector partners and you, most of the third sector that you're looking to partner with, you agree on the outcome, which might be eradicate homelessness in Scotland, right?
Sure.
But behind the aspiration are different ideologies and different ways of and emphases.
Sure.
Which means that actually working together to get to the end can be very, very difficult indeed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Suppose I do know what you mean, but I suppose I have found it to be, if it's values based, then the ideology might not necessarily get in the way as much. So I have found, I mean, I have found actually partnership working to be, what's the word? Is easy the right word? Yeah, I suppose it is. I find it easy, but then I think it's because we're not afraid. We're not afraid of the risk of, like, if somebody does want to treat it as being, if somebody does want to treat it differently, then that's not us that's choosing that. So we go in open-handed. So the open-handedness would be whoever, really, in the sense of, with a guard, but whoever. But I think there's just so much need. There's just so much need, and so, like, I think, yeah, I was going to say something, but it's going out of my head what it was. But basically, it's something that I think we've felt works.
Well, you sound like you could approach it with the right level of confidence in the fact that if you act with a straight bat and someone else abuses that or uses it as a platform or a mechanism to achieve their own preferment or platform or whatever, then so be it.
Yeah, so we partner with 25 charities across Scotland, so it's like it's a massive part of what we do, and yeah, we would just be open and open-handed and open book around all the different circumstances, and just have it open. But yeah, if there's, I mean, there can be, I think the worst circumstances are when you get people set up against each other for tenders, you know, like, and sometimes you get a tender announced and people do have to then scurry off and do their tenders to try and get the work.
Yeah.
And that's system. That's a system flaw. Should support for vulnerable homeless people be tendered in such a similar way as you might tender to build
Roads or something.
Yeah, and I think that's where I see it flawed, and that can then create like a kind of a drawing back. But genuinely, we partner like across the piece and just openly, and I think it's. I was going to say something else, but I just can't. It's gone from my head. But it was around acknowledging that yes, there's like a. I think if there's a. Do you know what it is for me? Informality is probably the main thing that I find the most helpful. If the more informal a charity is to that approach, I find it preferable. Like just what we talked about at the beginning. If it's all T's crossed, I's dotted before you get to any sort of work, we need that. It's good governance. We need that. But I think informality is the predominance, I would say. But I'm also conscious that we're on video, so.
Well, you're good at it. That's why. I mean, like, your confidence comes from being open and trusting and trustworthy, and a person of your word, or an organization of your word, and all that. I think there's a confidence that seems to come out of that, which makes somebody think, okay, that's not the normal way of doing things, but yeah, okay, let's do that. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
And it's brave, actually. It's a brave way of being, because people can take advantage of your informality. But that said, and I'm going to flatter you now if you don't mind, but what I've noticed in the joined up meetings with groups with many partners in, because I tend to say, I like to listen to those. I'm not really that keen to contribute in those. But you have got a very good ability to both seem casual, informal, but also have a tremendous recall for some data and relevant facts, and to be able to speak into the context of specific things. So you do have this kind of mental malleability that enables you to hold a relaxed posture, but also be quite sharp when it's time to come with the detail.
Yes.
So
yeah.
that's a real skill set. I applaud that, really. Notice that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's yeah. Thank you. I don't know what to do with that. Who's that directed at?
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to tie it up right now because, one, my wife's made lunch and it's gone cold, and she'll be angry with me. Two, we were supposed to go and order the Christmas meats from the butcher, and she's dropped off. I can just hear it. So she's obviously maybe she's doing that without me. Who's going to make sure that the bacon is the right kind of bacon?
Oh, you have to get involved. It's urgent.
Have to be involved in it. I'm going to cook it.
You have to get involved. You've got to get the right stuffing, the whole thing.
And anyone listening to this then in March, whatever, is going to be thinking, what the heck is he talking about, lunatic? Well, hopefully this will now prompt a lot of thought from me, and I don't doubt that probably in the maybe if in the first quarter of next year we come again. So it's
gladly.
It's an Andrew's Day today, 2020.
So it is.
Yes. Happy Andrew's Day to you.
It is. I think I might go outside and celebrate.
I had steak with a haggis and peppercorn sauce last night in celebration.
Nice. Have you got a kilt, Charlie?
I don't, but I regularly think about. I wouldn't. I'm married in a kilt. I'm happy in a kilt, but I think tartan trews is the way I'd want to go with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tartan trews. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What tartan?
Oh, well, I don't have a tartan, so I don't know. I just go with one of the generics. Was it?
You make one.
I'll let you into a secret. I'm telling you before half my team know this, so that's fine. I've asked Jack, marketing and that. We've got our bicentennial coming up in 2026.
I was about to say,
I want a Glasgow City Mission tartan commissioned.
I think you should. I was just about to say it. Go for it.
Yeah. and I will proudly wear that for the rest of my days. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And is it 26?
2026. Yeah.
2026, yeah. I can see that. I'm reading that off I've got a wee cue card behind your head.
Yeah. Yes, you do. There we go. So, yeah, that's a big
tartan. It's a great idea. Glasgow City Mission tartan.
Because there's a homeless tartan which Slange did, didn't they? And Nicola Sturgeon's been wearing the homeless tartan face mask.
Okay, I see. I hadn't picked up on that, right?
Yeah. And I thought, okay, yeah, we need that. Why haven't we got that already? So,
Definitely.
Yeah, project for the future.
I hope the intervention at the butcher's goes well.
Thank you. So do I. I'm hoping they haven't gone without me.
And feel free to. This has probably been recording of about an hour and a half, probably, hasn't it? So
yeah,
just feel
I'd say
free
so.
to
Something like that.
Just edit out anything.
I will. Well, I might have sworn when I lost connection, so I'm going to have to check it.
Yes, that's true.
Right, I'm going to stop.